Happy in Paraguay, some sort of horny fish.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is morning somewhere for July 8th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns, sitting right over there. She's my hottest temperature on record, Ashley Burns, my own personal heat wave. How you doing, Ash?
Good morning. Just fanning myself a little bit over here.
A lot of weather stuff, a lot of record-setting heat waves. Barrel is barreling down, to borrow your pun, Ashley, on the Texas Gulf Coast. Looks like it's going to land somewhere around Matagorda Bay and then head up through Texas, narrowly missing our old home of Austin, Texas.
All right, well, take it easy, Barrel.
I heard a great joke online. Somebody said even the hurricane doesn't want to have to deal with I-35 because they showed how like it was going towards I-35 and then
skirting along,
zipping away. So good luck to everyone who is making preparations for that. Hopefully it diminishes very quickly once it makes landfall.
Yeah, for the hurricane or for the heat. So the U.S. is currently experiencing heat waves just across the country. There's been already like one death in Death Valley. There was
earning the name.
Yes, there was a motorcyclist and another one hospitalized over the heat. It's not, by the way.
Is that this year? They had a death already.
Yes, this year there's been a death already. But if it sounds familiar, it's because last year there were a whole bunch of people flocking to Death Valley.
What did they had a name
in the
for
record
them?
heat? It was like extreme heat tourists. Which,
that's a made up.
Well, I mean,
that's
yes.
gotta be, right?
I mean, in the same way that there's like disaster tourists, people have this like they want to be where something unprecedented is taking place. Like this has never happened before, and I get to see it. I'm there, And so there were people last year. They were going to this specific town in Death Valley and taking pictures with a thermometer in the town where it's like 130 degrees out, because then they could take a picture that they were, in the hottest temperature on record anywhere in Earth.
I feel like, too, it's like, why do that? You're putting yourself in a terrible environment where you can take this photo. You can experience that high of a temperature in lots of different ways, Get in a sauna or something like that. Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's what makes it compelling, though, because it's dangerous. But then people go there and then they die. This happened last year in Death Valley when they were setting record temperatures.
Yeah. So, this too, a lot of people come unprepared. I mean, I don't know how if there's a lot of ways to prepare for 130 degree heat, but just to put that in perspective, that is hot enough to cook a steak.
That's insane.
The steak in this case being you.
Right. That's animal flesh.
Steak.
Your animal flesh. That's what you're made of. It's meat. That's you.
Did you know, Bernie?
Don't go there.
Are you 80% steak?
Delicious steak. That's insane. That's insane. Here's how you prepare for 127 to 130 degree temperatures. Travel 1,000 miles away from there. That's how you deal with that. Just go.
Straight into a hurricane.
Hey, pick a direction and just go. That's how you deal with that.
Yes.
Any direction will be better.
It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this summer plays out. I mean, Death Valley is not at the record temperatures right now, but it's within a couple degrees. Last year, I believe, when it was hitting that record temperature, it was end of August. So the fact that we're beginning of July and we're within a couple degrees of that is pretty crazy.
But it's also it is like the headline because you hit these high temperature records, but really we're dealing with another terrible thing where June was the 13th month in a row of record high temperatures. So it's not the acute events, it's not the individual readings. It's the overall trend, which is the really concerning thing.
It's the cumulative thing. Yeah,
and you can't lose it. Like, I mean, it's easy to sit here and say, like, oh, there's incredibly high temperatures, just go away from it or don't go to Death Valley. For most of the people in the world, it's not going to work that way. It's going to be everywhere.
If I may make a recommendation,
not that high,
if you need to get out of the 130 degree heat, can I recommend visiting a movie theater and watching Despicable Me 4 along with apparently everybody else?
I got to admit, once again, I didn't even know Despicable Me 4 was coming out. I didn't even know it was coming out. But it does give me some comfort that animated movies are what it's about. Like, right? It's like people want to go see animated movies. Kids, families, they want to go see animated movies.
Specifically animated sequels.
And are you up on like the Despicable Me franchise?
Well,
like where are they at this point in the lore?
The lore. Let's see. I know that the guy Gru, he's married. Has both the I believe adopted kids and also now has a baby. And I think in this one there is a witness protection plot point, and I think some of the minions get like superpowers. So that's what I know.
Yeah.
Which is admittedly not a lot. I know
Did
that
George R. R. Martin ever finish the books? Are they beyond that point at this point? I just have to admit I don't know much about it, which is fine. All I know is what I think a lot of people know about that franchise is the Minions. People love the Minions.
My mom loves the Minions.
Wasn't the Minions where the kids were dressing up in the suits to go watch the Minions standalone movie?
I think so. I think that was Minions. Yeah, where it was like all the kids in the suits. It's great.
I love that. That was so wholesome to me watching those kids do that. So it's great. It's great that it's doing well. It does kind of shock me that an actor like Steve Carell, probably his biggest moneymaker ever. And when I think of Steve Carell, I don't immediately think of Despicable Me.
So this movie has done $122 million in the box office in its opening weekend, which is huge.
I think the 122, to be clear, it had a Wednesday opening because of the holiday weekend.
Okay.
So that was over the long holiday weekend, but it has done 122 million in its first week.
Okay, so then I have a follow-up question, but it's not about Despicable Me 4, it's about Horizon. So we had talked about Horizon, which came out last weekend. It did not do, I think, what Kevin Costner was hoping that it would do, but I theorized that because this was the 4th of July weekend, it seems like the kind of movie that people will set off a bunch of fireworks, they're gonna, and then freedom, and then I need some more, as you do, just as a verb. And then you need some more freedom, and so you're going to go see Horizon at the box office. It seems like,
freedom! One ticket to Horizon, please.
It seems like that kind of movie that would do well, get a 4th of July weekend bump, basically.
I think that was a good analysis and a good prediction, because when we were kind of unpacking Inside Out 2's opening weekend, a lot of people in the comments did say, well, it was a Father's Day weekend movie, so maybe a lot of parents took their kids to see it as well. I think it's transcended that, and it can't be that. It's just Inside Out 2 is just a juggernaut. So I think your analysis that Horizon could benefit from a 4th of July bump was a good prediction. Unfortunately, did not come true. It dropped about 50% from its first week. It landed at number 6 at the box office this week, behind Bad Boys Ride or Die, which was in its 5th week. Horizon did $5.4 million at the box office. And one of the numbers I read, too, is that it's not doing anything outside of the U.S. It is a U.S. movie.
Yeah, that's not that surprising. But I feel like I can see Warner Brothers over in the corner, like rubbing their hands together. Unless Kevin Costner uses like post-production to like throw some minions into Horizon, like the background of Horizon 2 or something. I don't know. I feel like they're like getting the vault ready.
I imagine Kevin Costner's like kicked in the door to the post-production offices and was like, do any of you fuckers know how to draw? We're going to animate the second chapter of this thing. So just really quickly, to date, Horizon has made $22.1 million worldwide. Unfortunately for Costner, only 400,000 of that total comes from international ticket sales. So you were right in that it is an American movie and it could have benefited from a 4th of July freedom bump. It just didn't happen. And we were talking, you just mentioned Warner Brothers. We were talking about the fact that, people are saying, well, it's chapter 2's already filmed, so this is going to happen. It's like, not so fast, my friend. Laughs in Batgirl.
Yeah, a coyote would like a word.
Yes, yeah. And so we were talking about Warner Brothers. So I did a little bit of a deeper dive on the connection with Warner Brothers. It turns out Warner Brothers might not have much of a say as to what happens to this film and whether or not it could be like mothballed for like a tax write-off. Let me read this really quickly to you from an article on Forbes. Since Warner Brothers is only distributing Horizon and American Saga and has no major financial stake in it, a good chunk of the financing of the Western epic falls on Kevin Costner's shoulders. Variety reports that Costner spent $38 million of his own money to finance Horizon, while 2 private investors contributed to the rest of the production budget. On top of that, Variety noted, Costner and his investors footed the $30 million bill for Horizon's prints and advertising.
Oh, wow. So what's Warner paying for then?
It's interesting. And so it must just be a deal where they flex Warner's relationship with the cinemas. That must be what it is. So I think the metric I would watch here is when Horizon Chapter 2 comes out, does the number of screens drop significantly? because that'll be Warner's commitment to this thing.
Right, and this is a
Can
really
they even do that?
It's kind of a weird play as well for Kevin Costner as far as the, I guess, strategy goes, because a lot of movies, like let's take a little movie called Despicable Me. It was like, it came out, it was a success, but then it went theaters, and then it went home box office, streaming, DVD, all that stuff. And there's a lot of people that you can pick up in that long tail who didn't necessarily see it in theaters, who then go to see the second one, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think Horizon 2 is going to get that because it's coming out so close to Horizon 1.
Right.
There's no long tail to build the audience.
So do you try to like force it onto streaming right away? And if you do that, Ash, if you were in charge of this, would you try to force it on streaming before the second one comes out? Or does that just send the message, wait for this thing, it's going to be on streaming in a month?
Well, that's the problem that the box office was having prior to apparently it completely exploding again, right? Is people will just wait for stuff because people have now been trained that movies from the theater will be on home streaming, in some way within 30 to 60 days.
And we were just talking about how people don't necessarily associate Steve Carell directly with Despicable Me when they think about him. Another that ties in with this Costner like self-funding this epic passion project that he had. When you think of Mel Gibson, do you think of any big passion project in particular?
The Apocalypse one, right? What's it called?
No, you're Apocalypto?
Yes, thank you.
It's actually, so that might be a thread off of that, but it's a Passion of the Christ.
Yes.
Mel Gibson funded that, and that thing did gangbusters at the box office.
Did it come out 4th of July weekend?
But he self-funded it, and so it's like, it's probably the biggest moneymaker for Mel Gibson is Passion of the Christ. Even though he wasn't in it, he directed it and produced it.
Not Road Warrior?
No, not Road Warrior, and not the Lethal Weapon movies. It's Passion of the Christ, which actually starred Jim Caviezel in it. If it was Kevin Costner, I'm sure he would have said, Jim Caviezel.
I'm going to cast myself.
He's actually closer to Jim Caviezel than he is to Chris Hemsworth. But yeah, so I think that's the thing I'm going to be watching for the rest of the summers. How does Chapter 2 of American Saga do in theaters? And then B, how close is Inside Out 2 to becoming the biggest animated movie of all time from the box office?
You know what I'm going to be watching?
What's that?
Is the sequel to the hit 90s film Biodome starring Pauly Shore.
Happening in real life.
Did you see this NASA crew of 4 members just emerged from a year-long simulated Martian habitat mission. So
I think this is awesome.
It's so great. But it's like exactly like the premise for Biodome. It's amazing.
Well, I was reading about it. It was 4 people living in 1,700 square feet for a year.
Yes.
I didn't think of Biodome. I thought of your apartment in San Francisco. That's what I thought.
With no escape.
Well, yeah, they couldn't leave. It's not really clear to me. Like, I was trying to find pictures of this thing.
I haven't seen any. I need to see pictures of this habitat.
But it's not probably, it's a simulated environment. So the science is more important than the aesthetic. It could have been just a basic rudimentary mock-up.
Yeah, very possibly. Although if you're going to ask people to live in it for a year, I hope you're going to, do your best.
Right. I have a feeling for some reason it looks like the backyard in the Big Brother house. That's what for some reason. But a lot of red dirt around. But 1,700 square feet, they lived and worked in this space for a full year. And I was pleased to read that the astronauts or the volunteers of coming out, what they said was the time went very quickly. That's a good sign.
Yes, I'm sure they kept busy, and it is cool as well to be able to do these simulated missions ahead of time. They can it's cool. It's like a 3D printed habitat. So the idea being that they can send robots ahead of a human mission that can then build the habitats.
Yeah, part of a supply mission.
Yeah, and then you just arrive and your house is ready.
Theoretically, yeah, they could test it before they involve any living astronauts in it. Get rid of things like, I don't know, helium leaks or something like that. All I gotta say is I read in all the articles I read about the Habitat program that they just finished, they kept mentioning that it was 3D printed. That was always in all the articles. And all I can think is, man, NASA must have incredible 3D printers versus what we have in the consumer market, because I love the idea of 3D printing on paper. I have never held a 3D printed object and not been disappointed in the results.
Been like, it's so
yeah. Oh, this is like really cool, and it's
almost it's almost really cool. No, it is. You know what? The 3D printing is becoming a bigger and bigger thing in construction because you can imagine layering, but like layering concrete or something.
Having 4 kids now,
when
someone hands me a 3D printed project they worked on for 4 months, it activates the same part of my brain as when a 4-year-old hands me a drawing from school, and I'm like, wow, this is great.
It's so cool. And then you go, tell me about it.
You did this?
Tell me all about it, because I don't know what this is. Yeah. So,
Is that a spider? Oh, it's mommy.
But you're right. The technology is coming along, so it's nice that they can test this. You're right. I can't wait to see photos of what this 3D printed simulated habitat looks like.
Would you have done this? They did call for volunteers. It was like a public thing. I remember we talked about it previously, that they made a public call for this years ago. And I guess they got these volunteers, vetted them, and now they're done with their project. Would you do this?
Well, that depends. Am I going to be able to watch Despicable Me 4 from my house?
They would probably give you media. They would have to.
I wonder if they get to watch theatrical movies up on the ISS. Like, do they beam them into space? Because that way our favorite astronauts who are currently just over a month into their 8-day mission, who are definitely not stranded, will have something to do while they're up there.
Oh my God. With the ongoing privatization of the space program too, we're just like 3 cameras away from a hit reality show too, where they just like send people up to Mars and just put a bunch of cameras in there for us to watch them as well.
I would watch it.
4 people trapped in a 1,700 square foot space.
For a year. Big Brother on like space steroids.
How many people do you think, like, even listening to this, are 4 people who live in like a 1,200 square foot apartment? They're like, yeah, great job, NASA. Yeah, why don't you ask me? I hate this roommate. I hate that roommate. Nobody does dishes. Fucking sucks.
Maybe just 3D print some new dishes then.
Experiment over. So, Ashley, when are they going to get these astronauts who are not stranded? They're not stranded. I cannot be clear enough in this. They are not stranded on the ISS. When are they going to be able to come home?
They've been very clear that the Starliner is capable of being up there for like 120 some odd days. Not that they would need that. Not that they would need it at all.
So what are they like in? We never talk about this. Astronauts must get paid, right?
Right.
Like we only ever talk about the glory aspect of it. So are they getting like quintuple overtime at this point?
They're government employees, right? Does this like go towards their pension?
Well, I mean, yeah, they're government employees, but like they don't take the lady from the DMV and launch her into space one day. You know what I mean? And if they did do that, I'm sure she could ask for a little bit more money. Can I get like a little pay bump for this going into space? Imagine going to your postal carrier and say, "Where have you been? You haven't delivered the mail in like 3 days." Like, I was on Mars. They needed me. I had to go. It's part of the government gig. What do astronauts get paid a day? It's got to be more when they're up in space. It's got to be. There's got to be like they give them a little bump, right?
This is your space bump.
Yeah, you're up there. It's a hazard pay. It's the most hazardous environment you could possibly imagine.
So they're up there just enjoying their overtime, and also as an astronaut, it's got to be really cool, right? Your life's dream is to go to space. You got up there. You were gonna get up there for 8 days, and you're like, okay. Awesome. 8 days of space. That's the best. And then you're up there for over a month. You're like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool if that was your life dream and you think I'm only going to get 2 days in space and then you end up getting like a month and a half.
And I didn't even have to take my kids to see Despicable Me. Have you seen the IMDb rating on that? It's like 6.4.
Is it really 6.4? What's the?
Oh yeah, it's not a critical darling.
Oh,
it's successful on the back of like Minions, and people just like it anyway. It's not because it's a great movie.
And the record heat waves and stuff like that. I wonder if we're gonna have this for the rest of the summer, like one juggernaut at the box office every single week, and then other things just like plodding along.
I mean, look, like 2 weeks until Deadpool Wolverine, so it's gonna be a big one.
I'm super excited by that. I'm not even trying to think about it because I really do want to see it, and I don't want to consume anything about it. And it's just like, it's getting closer on the calendar. I hope the astronauts get back in time to watch Deadpool. I really do. I hope for their sake.
I hope so as well. Well, before we go, I'd like to thank our personal juggernauts for the summer. Kieran Carlson and Josh Tucker. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode of Morning Somewhere at patreon.com/Morning Somewhere.
Kieran and Josh, thank you so much for supporting the Patreon. Thank you all for listening.
Hope you make it back from space.
That does it for us today, July 8th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you all will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.